Hey guys, how's it going? Thanks for clicking on the video again. This video is part 2 on how to install a lift kit, and it will be based around doing the front suspension on my 2009 Mitsubishi Triton. So let's get into it. Alright, so now that the wheel's off, we're going to start off by taking off that brake line or whatever that thing is. We're going to get that off first, and after that we're going to undo these 3 nuts up here to undo the upper control arm. So we'll undo this one after that one, and then we'll undo the 3 bolts that hold the strut up the top, and then we'll undo the upper control arm, and then the whole thing should pop out. So I'll give them a big hit with some WD-40 just to clean them up, and then yeah, we'll get those bolts out. So I just took that bracket off there for the brake, and I just realized that my CV boot is ripped. So that's another thing on the to-do list. Anyway, I'll get these 3 off now, the upper control arm. I'm going to sit a jack underneath the lower control arm, because when I did this on the other side, the whole drum and all that just dropped down. So I'm just going to sit a jack just under it. So when I undo all this, it won't just go bang. Now I'm just going to lower down that jack now that this is undone. Lower that jack down, release all the pressure. And then I'll undo this bolt here, which is the lower mounting bolt of the front strut assembly. Now we will undo the top 3 mounting bolts for the strut assembly. Oh, you bastard. Now we will undo the 2 upper control arm mounting bolts. Alright, so now that we've got all those bolts out, all that's left to do is I'll get Oddie to bounce on the lower control arm so I can just get that strut out, and then yeah, it'll just be out. That's it. Thanks, man. And that's your front strut assembly out. I just gotta. Oh yeah, boy. Alright, so the front struts are assembled, so they're all together, and I've already installed the passenger side. I had some dramas with the bump stops and the upper control arm bolts, but you know, I'll show you guys when we get up to it. So let's get this in first. I'll start off with getting the strut into position with the 3 bolts that mounted up to the hat. Then I'll get the bottom of the strut mounted on. I'll get Oddie to bounce on it while we line up that hole. I'll show you guys how we do it. I'll then put in these 2 upper control arm bolts that attach it to the chassis, and then when it comes to the stage of getting the upper control arm bolts attached to this ball joint, I'll show you guys how I did it with the spring compressors. Alright, we'll start by sitting the strut in position. So just sit it in there somehow. Alright, so get those 3 top bolts up there. So you just get a mate or something to stand on the brake disc to push down on the lower control arm so you can line that bolt in there. So I've got Oddie here to give me some assistance with this. You just got, I just got someone to stand on the move this camera out on that brake disc there, and that push the lower control arm down. Just give that a bit of a tap. Alright, so now that the strut is sitting in there, you've got the, the 3 hat bolts up here, and they're bolted on, but they're not tightened. As you can see, I haven't even pushed them down yet. and you've also got the bottom of the strut mount mounted on to the lower control arm. Now I'm going to sit the bolts onto this upper control arm mounting points where the bushes are, and yeah. So now that those two upper control arm bolts are just sitting there, I haven't tightened them obviously, I'm going to go ahead and change the upper control arm bump stop, which is somewhere underneath here. I'll show you guys in a sec. I'll put side by side the stock ones and the Super Pro new ones. This came with the Fulcrum 2-inch lift kit, so I'm going to be putting those on, and I'll show you guys how I do that. Alright, so that's the bump stop there on the upper control arm, and I'm going to take that off and change it for the new one. We have installed the bump stop there, which is now installed fully. So now I will go ahead and tighten up the top strut bolts. I will snug these bolts in. I won't tighten them off, but I'll snug them in. And then what I'll start to begin to do is I'll start to compress the spring. That way we can get the this ball joint attached to the upper control arm. Normally you wouldn't need to compress the spring while it's in there, but because these are heavy duty springs rated to the load of a bull bar and a winch, and I've currently got no weight on the front of the car, as you can see there, so I've got no bull bar and winch on it. So yeah, normally you just put the jack underneath the lower control arm, jack it up until these bolts here line up with there. But in my case, when I jack up underneath there, because this is so strong, the whole car actually jacks up with it, which is dangerous because, you know, the other side's obviously on jack stands. So that means that I have to compress this spring here to get these 3 bolts into there, which is no big deal. So I picked these up from Autobahn for like, you know, 80 bucks or something. So alright, so I'll sit a jack underneath this lower control arm and jack it up until the car's weight is on it. So when the jack stand is officially not supporting the car anymore, that's where I'll stop. And then that's when I'll begin to compress the springs with the spring compressors. That's it. I don't know if you guys saw that, but it did move off the jack stands a little bit, as you can see. Alright, so theoretically these are supposed to be on opposite sides of the spring, but obviously we're lack of space, so put them as far away apart as they can. Get them as high as you can and as low as you can so they can clamp more of a spring. And you know, if it doesn't feel right, just reposition it, make sure these don't pop off, and yeah. Alright, so the camera battery died, so now I'm just going to record off my phone. So I got those tightened up. I ended up jacking this up a tiny bit more while it's still on, you know, just off the jack stand, and that did bring it up a lot more because this was compressed now. And I just got those 3 upper control arm bolts in, so now I'm just going to tighten up those 3 upper control arm bolts and then undo these 2 spring compressors, and then that's pretty much it. Now I'm just going to undo those spring compressors. There we go. Alright, so I'm just going to take this bolt off my old strut. It's just sitting there, and then I'm going to put it onto you know, the new strut. Sit the brake line or whatever line that was, sit that back on it. I'll set the jack underneath the lower control arm and jack it back up, so all the weight will be on the suspension. Then I'll go around and tighten up those 2 upper control arm bolts with the bushings in them, and then I'll also tighten up the lower strut mount bolt, and that will be pretty much it. I'll slap the wheel back on and lower it down.